So welcome to Exodus 19, a nation married to Yah, with your host Richard Massey. I pray that you guys are having a blessed Sabbath. I pray also that whatever you and your family are going through, that Yah gives you the strength to go through it. Today we're going to be reading from Acts 7. Let's just walk through chapter 7 of Acts. See what that chapter's talking about. Are we on point with that chapter? Or are we missing the point with this chapter? But like always, before we read that, let's go to 2 Chronicles 7:14. 2 Chronicles 7:14, it says, "If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I will forgive their sin and I will heal their land." So Yah is giving them a conditional way to have him to move in their lives, and without doing those following things, he won't move. And then we go to Matthew 6:33. Matthew 6:33. It says, seek ye first the reign of Elohim and his righteousness, and all these matters shall be added unto you." Okay, so that's always our first two scriptures that we read before we start our actual chapter. So let's read Acts 7. Let's see what Acts 7 is talking about. Acts 7:1. "And the high priest said, Is this so? And he replied, Men, brothers, and fathers, listen. The Elohim of esteem appeared to our father Abraham when he was in Aram, before he dwelt in Haran." And without me even going further, he appeared to him where? In Genesis 12. Because that's the whole point of proving that. And it's a really confusing matter, because a lot of people say that, it's about the law. And I say it's about the law, but it's also about covenant commandment. It's where Elohim and Abraham first made, if you read Genesis 12, when he approached Abraham and he made a promise to Abraham that was unconditional, right? And then you look at Genesis 15, Abraham comes back to Elohim and say, "Hey, listen, about that promise that you made me earlier, how will I know that what you said is going to come to pass?" And if you look at the wording in Genesis 15, Elohim now has Abraham flay open some animals, and now they're going to make a covenant. And Elohim is going to tell Abraham that now, because you question me, basically, the Bible doesn't read it like this, but you have to look at the wording. Because you kind of questioned my unconditional promise to you in Genesis 12, we're going to flay these animals open, and we're going to make a covenant. And whoever messes up, somebody's going to have to die. And without minimizing anything about who people call Jesus Christ, who people call Yeshua HaMashiach, that's when he's needed. He's needed for Genesis 15. Because we're going to mess up, especially in Exodus 34, when we build the golden calf. So like I always say, you know how you used to go to a department store like Walmart, and you buy a cart full of merchandise, maybe clothes for your kids, school's about to start, and you load the cart up with clothes, but you really don't have the money to pay for it, but you put it on layaway. So the way the Levitical priest was established, you were putting a little bit monthly on your balance. You still owed a great deal, and it still was a far away. This it was still a far couple of months or years before you can actually pay it off. But you were keeping them from getting in your hair and harassing you by because you're not paying. Right? So the blood of the animals was a down payment monthly. They actually did it yearly. Yahshua HaMashiach, or Jesus Christ, dying on the cross, was paying the balance in full. But what did he die on the cross for? He died on the cross to take you back to Genesis 12. Not so that you could do whatever you want to do by abandoning the law. And then when you talk about the law, it's two types of law. And we're going to get into that maybe, another day. Maybe if we cross it in this chapter. But let's continue on. 3, and said to him, come out of your land from your relatives and come here into a land that I will show you. Then Abraham came out of the land of the Chaldeans and dwelt in Haran. And from there, after the death of his father, he removed him to this land in which you now dwell. 5, and he gave him no inheritance in it, not a foot of it, but he promised to give it to him for a possession. When did he promise him that? In Genesis 12. Why is Acts 7 in the New Testament talking about the promise between Elohim and Abraham? And this is a 60-verse chapter. 5 again, and he gave him no inheritance in it, not a foot of it, but he promised to give it to him for a possession and to his seed after him, when as yet he had no children. So Elohim is making a promise to Abraham. Abraham don't even have kids yet. And then you can see in verse 5, he don't even have the land yet. So remember in Genesis 12 when he said that Elohim spoke and Abraham believed and Yah counted to him as righteous simply by the words coming out of Elohim's mouth. Abraham believed and Yah counted it to Abraham as righteousness, as faith. Whatever I'm simply saying out of my mouth that you hear, and you're not doubting it, I'm counting it to you as righteous. Even though you own no land yet, and I'm telling you that you're going to, and I'm telling you that I'm going to give this land to your seed, and you don't even have a child yet, just because Abraham simply believed, Yah counted it to him as righteous. Right? So 6, and Elohim spoke in this way, that his seed would be sojourning in a foreign land, and that they would be enslaved and mistreated for 400 years. Where's that? Later on in Mizraim, or some people call it Egypt, right? So Yah is telling, or Elohim is telling Abraham these things are going to happen, and this is being recanted in Acts 7, and now verse 7. And the nation to whom they shall be enslaved, I shall judge them, said Elohim, and after that they shall come out and serve me in this place. So this is one of the things that I always say, and I have another title called the Acts of Yah, right? It's the things that Yah do based on Deuteronomy 28. So look at 7 again. He's telling Abraham that they're going to go and be enslaved for 400 years in this particular place, right? So look at verse 7. It says, and the nation to whom they shall be enslaved, the nation who is going to take control of Israel, he says, and then I'm going to judge them. So Yah uses people to do a certain thing, and then he'll judge them for doing it. And I know this is going all over the place, but I'm simply following what this chapter is talking about, because he's telling Abraham that Israel's going to go into captivity by a certain nation, Mizraim, Egypt. He says, but then I'm going to judge them, says Elohim. And after that, when it's done, and that's the story of Pharaoh in Exodus, they shall come out and serve me in this place. 8. And he gave him the covenant of circumcision. And so he brought forth Yishak and circumcised him on the 8th day. And Yishak brought forth Yaakov, and Yaakov brought forth the 12 ancestors. 9. And the ancestors, becoming jealous, sold Joseph into Mitzrayim, but Elohim was with him. And remember, in 5 he said, or 6 he said, a certain nation is going to enslave you. So now in 9 we're telling you how that's happening. And this is all taking place in Acts 7. And the reason why I keep saying this is taking place in Acts 7 is people keep thinking that you can either stay in the Old Testament or you can stay in the New Testament. And they shouldn't mix. But you have a situation in the New Testament when somebody is recanting the Old Testament, right? Because you got to figure in 2024, we can go back to both old and new. But back then, all they had was the Old Testament to preach on. So I don't even know how religions could say, well, I don't even acknowledge the New Testament because that talks about Jesus or Yeshua, and he was just a regular man. But even in Acts 7, this writer here is not even talking about Yeshua for the most part. We haven't really mentioned Yeshua or Jesus' name so far. He's talking about Elohim or Yah and Abraham. He's giving remembrance to those two guys so that you can understand that they are relevant. And this is who they're talking about. Right? He says 9, and the ancestors becoming jealous, his other brothers, sold Joseph into Mitzrayim, but Elohim was with him, right? 10, and we just reading this word for word, right? I can't make nothing up. 10, and delivered him out of all his afflictions and gave him favor and wisdom before Pharaoh. In Genesis, didn't that happen? When he was given to Pharaoh, didn't Yah Elohim show Joseph favor? He said the sovereign of Mitzrayim, and he appointed him governor over Mitzrayim and all his house. Didn't he do that? Genesis 7 is going over that story. Didn't Joseph get favor in Egypt? Sure he did, right? 12, but Yaakov heard that there was grain in Mitzrayim, and he sent out our fathers the first time. So when Joseph and everybody was going low on food, he sent the brothers to Egypt or Mitzrayim to get some more grain. True or false? True. And at the second time, Joseph was made known to his brothers, and Joseph's race became known to Pharaoh. What does that mean, his race? And I really don't want to get into this right now, but I did say that we cover what the chapter talks about. Why is it mentioned that Joseph's race now becomes known to Pharaoh? Didn't he already know that he wasn't Egyptian? He already knew that they weren't the same race. Now I don't want to tap into that. That's a whole nother hours of conversation. 14, and Joseph sent and called his father Yaakov and all his relatives to him, and it was 75 people. 15, and Yaakov went down to Mizraim and died, he and our fathers. 16, and they were brought over to Shechem and laid in the tomb that Abraham bought for a price of silver from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem. Didn't Abraham buy land for his wife Sarah when she died? "17, but as the time of the promise drew near, which Elohim had sworn to Abraham, the people increased and multiplied in Mizraim or in Egypt." Didn't that happen? The new Pharaoh came in because when Joseph was given favor the first time with the Pharaoh that was there at that time, he put him in charge. But now there's a new Pharaoh, and 18 said, until another sovereign arose who did not know Joseph. And I used to always ask myself, how can the first Pharaoh know Joseph? He does all this great work. Like, you would think his picture or his name would be mentioned highly somewhere for the things that he's done when he came up with the interpretation of the dream, right? But then 18 says another Pharaoh came who did not know Joseph. And I was say, well, how does he not know him? How does he not know what he's done? But I forget what book I read in the Apocrypha. And the Apocrypha explained that even though this man was considered another Pharaoh, he was from another nation when they took over Mitzrayim. And I often wonder if it's because the Bible talks about it. Somebody took over Egypt at a later date, and I wonder if while in that position, that's the reason why he didn't know Joseph. 19, having dealt treacherously with our race, this one mistreated our fathers, making them expose their babies so that they should not live. This reminds me of today. And I'm trying not to go into race because I'm going to tell you something. I think that racism is a joke. I think it's something established to make money. I think it's something established to keep people at odds with each other. I think it's something established to allow you to not be paying attention to the things that's going on around you. I think that a lot of times you see a lot of religions that talk about the black man being this and the black woman is that, and she's God and he's God and we're greater. And I don't agree with a lot of stuff that is said. My belief is that Elohim was talking to Abraham and Moshe, and they happened to be black. That's my belief. It started out black. I heard Louis Farrakhan say one time, honor thy mother and thy father. I think that who he talked to in the black culture is the mother and father of this world. Now hear me out. But I think like the Levites were supposed to train and teach their other 11 brothers the law. And as a whole, being an Israelite, you're now supposed to turn and teach the world, right? Who Elohim is. What is the number one goal? Is to turn the hearts of the children back to the Father, right? So it's not to keep it for yourself. But like I said, this thing goes so deep that it would take time and hours to explain as far as what I feel like I'm reading. 19, having dealt treacherously with our race, this one mistreated our fathers, making them expose their babies so that they should not live. That happened in Exodus, right? 20, at that time Moshe was born, and he was well pleasing to Elohim, and he was reared 3 months in the house of his father. That happened, right? 21, but when he was exposed, the daughter of Pharaoh took him up and reared him or raised him as her own. That happened. 22, and Moshe was instructed in all the wisdom of the Mizrites and was mighty in works and in words and works. 23, and when he was 40 years old, it came to his heart to visit his brothers, the children of Israel. 24, and seeing one of them being wrong, he defended and revenged him who was oppressed, smiting the Mizrite. So two brothers were fighting, or a Mizraite was beating a Hebrew or an Israelite, and Moses got in the middle and he killed the Egyptian, right? 25, and he thought that his brother would have understood that Elohim would give deliverance to him by his hand, but they did not understand. 26, and the next day he appeared to two of them as they were fighting and urged them to peace, saying, men, you are brothers. Why are you doing wrong to one another? So the first day, an Egyptian was beating on an Israelite, and Moses broke up the fight and he killed the Egyptian and hid his body. So then the second day, it's two Israelites fighting, and Moses intervened and said, hey, listen, why are you guys fighting? You guys are brothers. There should be peace among you. And then look at what the one Israelite said to him. 27. But he who was wronging his neighbor pushed him away, saying, who made you a ruler and a judge over us? 28. Do you wish to kill me as you killed the Mizraite yesterday? So Abraham didn't realize that somebody saw him kill this man. And Egyptian is over the Israelites at that time. So that's a no-no. So Moses had to end up leaving Egypt, and that's when he ended up going to the Mennonites, right? So 29, at this saying, Moshe fled and became a sojourner in the land of Midian, where he had two sons, Midian did. 30, and after 40 years were completed, a messenger of Yahweh appeared to him in a flame of fire in a bush in the wilderness of Mount Sinai. And again, I'm asking, why is Acts 7 not talking more about Jesus Christ? Or why is he not talking more? Or why is it not talking about something new that Jesus or Yeshua is implementing? But why is it spending so far 30 verses going over a story that is in Genesis and Exodus? If you're saying that covenant and part of the law don't matter, why is the New Testament bringing this back up? Why is it Exodus 7 talking more about grace? Because you said when Yeshua died on the cross, or when Jesus died on the cross, we're under grace now. We're under a different dispensation. But Acts 7 is talking about covenant and law. Very confused with this whole situation here. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I think that in the black community, the reason why a lot of us is dying, and sorry for my depressed statement, is going to continue to die, is because we have forsaken Deuteronomy 28, 1 through 14. And I think now we are living through Deuteronomy 28, 15 to 68. And like we read 2 Chronicles 7:14, as a nation, I don't think it's going to stop. I don't care how smart you are. I don't care what office you hold. I don't think it's going to stop. I think that it's going to continue. I think that black men, I think black women, black people are dying every week. Black people at a high number is being incarcerated every week. Every single week. And I don't think it's going to stop. I don't care what I don't care if the political party has great intentions or not. I think that Yah's word, again, like when he spoke to Abraham, and a lot of people say, you know, in the Old Testament, God was so mean. And in the New Testament, Jesus Christ is so nice. He's so full of grace. That's so far from the truth. Because if you read Deuteronomy 28 from 1 to 14, why would a mean God say to you, hey, listen, this is a conditional covenant. If you do these things for me, I will do these things for you. He says, but if you don't do these things, and you turn your back on me, and you decide not to follow me, Deuteronomy 28:15 to I believe 68 or 66. Read this for yourself. Read Deuteronomy 28 for yourself and see if he says, if you love me, these first 14 verses I'll do for you. He says, but if you don't. Now you remember that scripture says that the words that come out of his mouth cannot return void, but they must set out to do the things that he said. So when we don't do what he's saying to do, Deuteronomy 28:15 to 68 has to come about. And you can't say he's mean because he's now allowing it to happen to you, because he told you in Deuteronomy 28:1. And as human beings, that's exactly what we do. We want to hold somebody accountable when it has to do with us. That dude said he was going to pay my money back on Thursday at 5 o'clock, and I'm standing here. He's not even nowhere to be seen. He's not going to bring my money. He better bring my... But when Yah says that this is what I'm looking for you to do in order to get blessings, and then we don't do it, we say, God know my heart. The man upstairs, he know me. He absolutely does know you. He absolutely 100% knows you. And he knows that you're not following Deuteronomy 28:1 through 14. So how can you say that he's mean? Before he even brought down fire and brimstone on Sodom and Gomorrah, he contemplated within himself. He said, should I even tell Abraham, who's going to be the father of many nations, what I'm about to do? Or should I just walk on and do what I'm going to do to Sodom and Gomorrah? Now here's the mighty Elohim deciding that he's going to go and talk to Abraham and let Abraham have a chance to respond to what he's telling him he's about to do. And that's when you get the story said, if it's 40, will you destroy the whole city for 40? Abraham is now pleading. He's trying to work a number, and Yah said, if I find 40 here, I won't do it. He said, excuse me, Yah, I don't mean to be disrespectful. If you find 20 there, will you destroy the city? He says, if I find 20 there, I will not destroy the city. He says, one more time, Yah, forgive me. I don't mean to be outspoken. He said, if you find 15 there, 15 righteous people, will you not destroy the city? And what does the same mean Yah say? He says, if I find 15 there, I will not destroy. He took him down to what, 10 or 5? He says, if I find 10 righteous people, I will not destroy the city. What kind of mean Elohim is that? He's not. He's trying to find a way not to have his word come back void and not to have to do the things that he has to do, that he said that he would have to do. But we're not giving him a reason. That's why I know I've been in the church 55 years. And a lot of my prayers were hit or miss. And I was always told, your faith's not strong enough. I said, my faith based on what? My son is autistic. My money is low. I'm coming to church every week, every Wednesday, and nothing's happening. And sometimes something will happen, and sometimes something won't. And I'm like, why is this not? And then I find out 5 years ago, you don't have a connection. A lot of things you are saying that the Bible says, the Bible don't say that. And that's when I changed my life. And that's when I stepped away from being, well, I haven't been to church in now 8 to 9 years now. And I'm not promoting that fact. But I don't consider myself a Hebrew Israelite or a Muslim. I don't consider myself a denomination. I consider myself a man that simply tries to follow the word of Yah for what it says. Simply for what it says. And what I'm finding out in the last 5 years and what I've heard in the last 55, they don't match up. So a lot of you young kids out here that might be listening to me, that might not want to go to church, and might think that Christians are hypocrites and phony, and now you're depressed, and you're going through all kind of situations in your life, and you feel like nobody understands you. The reason why you won't give Elohim a chance is because of what somebody told you. And 95% of what they told you is a lie. Is a total lie. So if I gave you a lamp, if I gave you a brand new lamp out of the box, and I said, this lamp, once you plug this lamp in, it can do all kind of things. It can be a strobe light. It can turn to many colors. It can do this and that. It can go as bright or as dim as you want it to go. It's waterproof. Take this lamp home. And you take that lamp home, you take it out the box, and you plug it in, and nothing happens. And you take it to another room and you plug it in, and then you turn on the switch, and nothing happens. And you look and you say, this dude told me this lamp was all amazing, and this lamp did all this stuff and all that stuff. This lamp is a piece of crap. And you take that lamp and you throw it out in the trash. And come to find out, the lamp was perfect, but you didn't have no power in your house. For some reason, the power was off. That's how I felt. I felt like in my life for 55 years, the power was out. And I'm not saying that my life is perfect, but now I understand why y'all sometimes, because people say, just ask him, he'll do it. You got to have that. Sometimes it's not about faith. Sometimes he just, I ain't doing it. Sometimes we'll lose a loved one because we didn't honor Deuteronomy 28. You're praying for your little baby. You're praying for your grandmom. You're praying for a job. You're praying for your house. You're praying for the government to change. But you don't follow Deuteronomy 28. I believe that that's the connection to why things are not happening or things are happening in our life. Let's hurry up and read this so I can stop, because this is still a ways to go. 33, but Yahweh said to him, take your sandals off your feet, for the place where you stand is set apart ground. 34, I have certainly seen the evil treatment of my people who are in Mizraim, and I have heard the groaning and have come down to deliver them, and now come, let me send you to Mizraim. 35, this Moshe whom they have refused, saying, who made you a ruler and a judge? This one Elohim sent to be a ruler and a deliverer by the hand of the messenger who appeared to him in the bush. So when that man said to you, who made you ruler over us? Elohim is saying, I'm the one that's sending you to be a ruler and a deliverer by the messenger who appeared to him in the bush. I'm the one giving you the authority to do the things that you're doing, the things that you're going to do. 36, this one led him out after he had done wonders and signs in the land of Mizraim and in the Red Sea and in the wilderness 40 years. 37, this is Moshe who said to the children of Israel, Yahweh your Elohim has raised up for you a prophet like me from your brothers. Him you should hear. 38, this is he who is in the assembly in the wilderness with the messenger who spoke to him on Mount Sinai, and with our fathers, who received the living word to give to us. Right? Exodus 19. Right? That's the reason why I call my podcast Exodus 19. Because this right here, a short snippet, is where they're going to make the promise that's going to be blood ratified, and it's going to be a confirming meal attached to it. This is when they're given the covenant, right? This is when they're giving it the covenant. 39, unto whom our fathers would not become obedient, but thrust away, right there, see? In 38, they made an agreement. They had food over it. They ate food, a confirming meal, and it was blood ratified. So in 38, this is like a summary of what happened. So in 38, they made a promise, and then skipping a long time down here in 39, they became not obedient, but thrust away, and in their hearts they turned back to Mizraim. They desired to go back to the place where there was many gods, many gods, right? 40, and saying to Aaron, make us mighty ones to go before us, for this Moshe who had led us out of the land of Mizraim, we don't know what has become of him. And remember, Moses was in the mountains for 40 days and nights. And because they're saying that they don't know what happened to him, they turned to Aaron and they said, make us a golden calf. And right here is where the law is now going to be implemented. Because now, with them in bad standards with Elohim, they need to law to make that monthly installment. Just enough to keep Elohim from killing them. Because remember in Genesis 15, whoever messes up under this new covenant, we're not talking about Adam and Eve, and that's Genesis 1. This is an agreement between Elohim and Abraham. He's going to create a new nation with Abraham. Remember, I'm promising you seed, and I'm going to give you land. So this has to do with that, right? But 40 says, saying to Aaron, make us mighty ones to go before us, for this Moshe who led us out of the land of Mizraim, we do not know what has become of him. Let's make a golden calf. So what does 41 say? And they made a calf in those days and brought an offering to the idol and were rejoicing in the works of their own hands, something that they created, nothing that Elohim created. So this is when, so now from the time of Exodus 19 to the time in short, I don't know the years, how long it took, but from Exodus 19 to like Exodus, I think 33 or 34, before the golden calf, they were under covenant. And it initiated from Genesis 12. But now when they build the golden calf, if you make a covenant, an agreement with somebody, and then you break it like they did with the golden calf, the covenant is now nullified. It's no longer any good. So now Elohim has to make a law up, and the law came up 430 years after Genesis 12. So to keep them in right standing with Elohim, they now have to follow the law, because the covenant is cut off, it's stopped. Because you can't add to it, you can't revise it, it's done. Because I shook your hand based on this in Genesis 12. So I can't say, well, give me another chance. No, it's done. Especially if that's implied in the agreement, is that if anybody mess up, the covenant is done. And this is what Acts 7 is trying to explain to you, and why it's talking about Genesis and Exodus so much. The New Testament and the Old Testament, they go hand in hand. So people talking about, we under grace, we under grace. You under grace because he allowed you to wake up this morning, but that's not all it's about. He woke you up this morning for maybe to hear my voice to tell you to go back to covenant commandment. And a lot of Christians say, well, okay, let's say we go back to covenant commandment, and you talk about number 1, love the Lord with all your heart, mind, and soul. We do that. And don't serve no other God before me. Number 2, we do that. And don't murder nobody, and don't steal, and don't commit adultery. We do that. But why do you skip the Sabbath? Why do you skip the feast days? And see, here's the confusing part about saying, well, we don't have to do the law, but we have to do the law. But then in dietary law, you eat pork and you eat seafood. So remember the young man that came to Yeshua and he says, tell me how to get into the kingdom? And he said, well, do this, this, and this. And he said, I do all those things from my youth. He said, but one thing you lack. He said, give everything that you have away and come follow me. And the Bible says that the boy walked away sad. So you do try to honor him with all your heart, mind, and soul. You do try to not have no other gods before you. And sometimes a God could be you. You're doing whatever you want to do, and every time you wake up, you're making a decision because you fine or because you handsome that you're going to sleep with this person even though you know you're wrong. Right? So a lot of times we are our own gods. Sometimes our car is. Sometimes our house is. But that's neither here nor there. Let's go in small steps. But you don't honor the Sabbath. That's right in the middle. Which one is that? The Sabbath. And then if you look at the feast days, I think that's Exodus 12. He said, these are my days. So Elohim turned and gave them up to worship the host of heavens, as it has been written in the book of the prophets. Did you bring slaughtered beasts and offerings unto me during 40 years in the wilderness, O house of Israel? 43. And you took up the tent of Molech and the star of your mighty one in Kenyan, images you made to bow down to them. Therefore I shall remove you beyond Babylon. 44. The tent of witnesses was with our fathers in the wilderness, and he instructed Moshe to make it according to the pattern that he had seen it. So when Moses was up in the mountains for 40 days, he was getting instruction on how to build the temple, the tabernacle, the high priest's garments, clothes, the Levites' clothes, and all that stuff. 45, which our fathers, having received it in turn, also brought with Yahushua into the land possessed with the Gentiles, who Elohim drove out before the face of our fathers until the days of David. 46, who found favor before Elohim and asked to find a dwelling for Elohim of Yaakov, but Solomon built him a house. All this stuff is true. All this stuff is Old Testament. Why is he spending so much time going over the Old Testament if the Old Testament is not necessary no more? However, the Most High does not dwell in dwellings made with hands, as the prophet says. 49, the heaven is my throne, the earth is my footstool. What house shall you build for me, says Yahweh, or what is the place of my rest? 59, has my hand not made all these things? He's like, you building me a house, and the materials that you're using, I made them. 51, he says, but you stiff-necked. What does that mean? You stiff-necked. Today we would say you hard-headed. Whatever other word you want to use. This is what he's saying to him. This is what Elohim is saying to him. You stiff-necked and uncircumcised in heart and ears. You always resist the set-apart spirit as your fathers did. You also did. (52) Which of the prophets did your fathers not persecute? Y'all killed every single person that I sent to tell y'all that the way that y'all were walking was wrong. Y'all killed them. Y'all even killed Yahshua HaMashiach, or Jesus Christ. When he came to show you, you put him on the cross, you killed him. Because you didn't want to hear it. Because you don't want to turn from the things that give you pleasure. You'd rather say, even though this makes perfect sense, even though what this man is saying makes perfect sense, I got to keep sleeping around. Or I got to keep stealing. Or I got to keep lying. Because it makes me feel good. But when I talk to that person, you know what I'm going to say? Yeah, I don't understand what you mean. 52 again. Which of the prophets did your fathers not persecute? And they killed those who before announced the coming of the righteous one, of whom you now have become the betrayers and the murderers. 53. Who received the Torah as it was ordained by messengers, but did not watch over it? 54. And hearing this, they were cut to the hearts and gashed your teeth at him. They were mad. This man is in here spitting all these facts in my face, pissing me off, cutting me the heart, calling out, calling me on the carpet. He's telling me everything that I did. 55. But he, being filled with the set apart spirit, looked steadily into the heavens and saw the honor of Elohim and Yahweh standing at the right hand of Elohim. And he said, look, I see the heavens open and the son of Adam standing at the right hand of Elohim. And crying out with a loud voice, they stopped their ears. They didn't want to hear it. Even though this man was not lying. And he was retelling the story from Genesis and Exodus and telling them a little bit about themselves. Somebody out there is turning their channel away from me. They're stopping up their ears because they don't want to hear it. And rushed upon him with one mind. Get this dude out of here. Because just like with social media, it's all a numbers game. The more people like me, the better I do, right? But there's some people that's not going to like me. And they're not going to pay me no mind. Because I'm corny. I don't know what I'm talking about. So this applies to verse 57. And crying out with a loud voice, they stopped their ears. They don't want to hear this. And they rushed upon him with one mind. That is to take him out of here. So how do you take me out of here? You take away my numbers. You make me to no effect. And they threw him out of the city and stoned him. And the witnesses laid down their garments at the feet of the young man named Saul. And they were stoning Stephanos as he was calling and saying, and listen what Stephanos is saying, even though that they're beating him up and about to kill him. Master Yeshua, receive my spirit. And kneeling down, he cried with a loud voice, Master, do not hold this sin against them. And having said this, he fell asleep. That was a great chapter. That was a really, really good chapter. So I took up enough of your time. This is just a reminder that this podcast is on Spotify under Richard's Podcast. Also on Instagram, and how you can find me is 19_Exodus. And I'm live on YouTube as well. And how you can find me on there is 19Exodus Richard Massey. So don't forget to like my page, and don't forget to share it where it applies, and don't forget to hit the notification button. And let's give an applause to Elohim and Yeshua. And don't forget to subscribe as well. And I want to give a shout out to my man Richard Turner for my background music. Tomorrow I'm going to be reading from 1 Kings 18. 1 Kings 18. And next week I will be reading from Acts 8. So I hope you guys have a blessed Sabbath. And I pray that you guys enjoy the rest of your Sabbath. And peace or shalom.